Good morning and welcome in. This is the Right Wing episode 6, and this one's been a long time coming. I've been working on this episode for quite a while now. I've tried to film it 3 times now, 4 times. The rain stopped us. Then we thought we had a good episode last night. The lawnmower stopped us. The audio was terrible. Some things you just can't avoid whenever you're filming like I am. I don't have a studio. I'm doing this in the backyard in my building. I've actually been waiting in the building for the last 25 minutes, trying to let the camera lens acclimate. So if I look a little bit foggy right now, it's part of that acclimation process. And it's been a battle. I mean, this episode, Satan has been working against me to get this thing filmed. I'm happy y'all stuck around. I'm happy y'all are here for it. I'm pretty fired up. I'll be speaking on gender ideology today. I really did some research, really did some reading in the Bible, did some reading on my own, did some studying, did a lot of statistics within this, and it's going to be an awesome episode. What does it mean to be a man and what does it mean to be a woman? How are they different? Where's the differences lie at? I'm super excited y'all are with me. Y'all are going to support me. And yeah, thanks for bearing with me through all of the technical difficulties or whatever you may call them. So, super excited though, but breaking news this week. Yesterday, Monday, Trump cut FEMA aid for states that don't support Israel. He faced some major backlash on this. And he ultimately was like, oh, no, we'll just take that out, that part of it, about the the Israel thing. And this goes to answer my question last week, really. Would Trump choose America over Israel? And outside of the backlash and taking it back, he obviously will choose Israel over us. This is saddening to me. I was really hoping that he would be okay with choosing America first, but he's not. He just, like, the little sliver of hope that he had of being able to redeem himself. And I was even I didn't know if he even really had that left in him. There's just this little bitty sliver, and he put that to bed last night, I think. Well, yesterday. It's just not there. I don't think he's gonna support us. I think he would rather support Netanyahu. And this is FEMA is like hurricane relief, it's natural disaster relief when they're coming in and helping. And he said he wasn't going to help states who didn't support Israel. I don't know what the guideline for that is. Like, if you criticize them at all, is that not supporting them? I don't know. But he did take it back, but it was really just after backlash. It was really just after everyone kind of got onto him, was like, hey, this is not what we want. Like, this is you putting Israel first. In other news, RFK pulled the mercury, finally was able to get the mercury out of vaccines. I'm a big anti-vax guy. I don't know. I don't speak about it a ton. If you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen me post about it at least once. It's just something I'm not a fan of. Why are we putting this synthetic thing into our system? Do we not think that God created us to fight these diseases off? Especially when these vaccines have all kinds of chemicals, bad things in them that are causing issues. I mean, they really do. I believe that. I think they're causing a lot of the issues we're seeing. RFK released earlier this year a study about vaccines that was done decades ago that showed like 1,000% increase in autism in children. I mean, when they had the vaccine, that's a big deal. I think it's something we should be talking about more and not just blindly saying, oh yeah, give me the vaccine, So that's a big deal. It's breaking news that he's pulling things out of those vaccines because there's way too much in them. I'm not going to say ban vaccines. I mean, it's your choice if you want that for your kid. Me personally, I don't. But at least get the bad crap out of them. Like, there's no reason for mercury to be in these vaccines. Why are we injecting our kids with mercury? So that's kind of the news today. But getting into what the episode is going to be on, gender ideology. How do you start here? The world that we live in now, there's so many transgenders and gays, queers, whatever you want to call them, right? And that's just become the norm, sadly. The norm is just to have these gays, these transgenders running around. running society in some sense, and that's not what God designed. And so I started thinking about gender ideology because, we used to have fine lines between what a man is and what a woman is. And these lines have sort of crossed over, they blurred and kind of ran together in a lot of cases of what is a man and what is a woman. And so I think to really dive into this, you have to go back to the beginning. I believe the Bible is fact. I believe it supports and bolsters my political beliefs. Most of my political beliefs are derived from biblical beliefs. And so when I think about transgenderism, I think, well, what did God create? Well, first, God created man. That's Genesis 2:7. He created Adam from the dirt. It was by God's own hands. He created this individual, which is a man, not a transgender. Right? Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Y'all probably heard that. He created this man. And in Genesis 2:15, it says, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to keep it. So right there, before woman's ever even created, man already is starting to have this designated role. He's been chosen to work, to keep the garden. And this, there's nothing crazy. He was living in a paradise situation, essentially. But he's working. That's always been kind of the man's role, is to work. So Genesis 2:18, though, says, it is not good for this man to be alone. I'm going to make a helper fit for him. And that helper word's super important here. Man was alone, and it's not good for man to be alone. Men, if you're married, you probably know it's not good for you to be alone. We appreciate our wives. And man, helper, it's a great term for our wives because I don't know about y'all, I had to have my wife button my sleeves last night. I need a helper. If I didn't have a helper, I probably wouldn't even got this shirt on. So, we had to have these helpers. And so God creates woman. And when you translate this word helper, it translates to Ezer Kenegdo. This is the original translation, right? This is the original text. Ezer Kenegdo, which means the helper that is opposite of him. It means this helper that fits everything that he's not, and he fits into what she's not. And creates this single unit, essentially. She's opposite of what he is. That's important. There's roles, right? There's a man's role and there's a woman's role. And the woman was made to be opposite of the man. Ezer Kenegdo. And this term Ezer is only ever used to describe Eve and to describe God as the helper to Israel, to us, to his people. Specifically, we see it in the Old Testament. Ezer is it's a term of honor. It's not like something to be thrown around, just lightly. This is a special thing. If you see Ezer, that means it's a term of something big, like God. You don't just throw around things that God's called and it not be something important. Whenever we have something where God is nicknamed this, that signifies importance. So for women, they are important. And the other thing with this is they're not less than. It's equal to. It's a helper that's equal to and that it fits perfectly with. So they're designed differently. They're designed oppositely and to fit together like puzzle pieces from the beginning. So why are we trying to blur these lines? That's sort of what I'm getting at here. And another distinction was woman was made from man. Right? Adam was made from dirt. Eve was made from Adam. So there's a difference there off the rip there too about just how they were made. They were made differently, and that's important to wrap our heads around. So, and once we understand those differences, we can start understanding how they live differently. In Genesis 3, we see them. We see the fall. We see Adam and Eve fall, and within that, we all know the story. Adam eats of the tree. She convinces Adam to eat of the tree. They try to hide from God, hide their nakedness from God. I think we've all heard that story. But there's a punishment that goes along with this fall for each of them. It's a different punishment too. Woman, Eve, was cursed with pain during childbirth. And that man should rule over her. That's how the Bible worded it. She now becomes submissive to the man. This is where we get the institution of headship, which means the man is over the woman. He has this headship over her because of the knowledge of good and evil. And man is there to protect his helper, his wife. But we get the pain during childbirth as something that she's going to go through. She will now, I think it actually says her pain will be multiplied during childbirth. Now man also gets punishment, and it says man is punished with working the ground to eat the plants of the field. It'll be by the sweat of his brow that the plants get made, the ground gets worked. You know, that's a distinct difference in how they're punished. The man works, the woman has children. That's sort of their punishment as it goes. It's interesting because you set up gender roles just like that. Your gender roles are set up by God in that, right? The man is going to work, the woman is going to have children and be submissive to her husband. And what's interesting is there's a dopamine release inside of the punishments for each of them. If you're a man and you've ever been outside working hard in the ground, and you worked it hard trying to get, grass to grow, plants to grow, right? There's a satisfaction that comes with it. Yeah, it's hard work. You may not necessarily want to go do that work, but there is a certain satisfaction you get from it, this fulfillment within it. And the same with women. You see this dopamine release when they have kids. There's a reaction as they're having the children and once they do have them where they feel satisfaction from those kids. It's like a little bitty, I had a buddy call it like an Easter egg that God left for us. Within our punishments, we still have this dopamine release, this good thing that comes from it. And within all this, marriage ends up being instituted. It's one man, one woman. So marriage becomes this idea of that. Two different beings with two different roles that fill each other's opposite needs, coming together to become one unit, one well-rounded unit. And this is how God created it. Now, you probably heard a lot of this stuff before. So we need to dive into what's changed, and I'm gonna go on a trail here. I'm gonna bring you along with me, and just stick with me and follow me here. It's gonna take a little bit to get around to the full point here, but I think you'll see it kind of come together towards the end, and we'll discuss it a little bit more. So this was the standard for a lot of time. I mean, thousands of years. This was what was standard. You see some things where you can start seeing some gay tendencies or whatever, like Sodom and Gomorrah, but for the most part, this was the standard, not the exception. And so I started doing some research into the percentage of married women in the workforce. So this was always a pretty low number for thousands of years. And I'm going to go through it. It starts in 1900 and goes every 20 years. It was at 5.6% in 1900, 9% in 1920, 15.5% in 1940, 31.7% in 1960, 49.9% in 1980, and 61.1% in 2000. 61.1% of married women, were in the workforce. So in 100 years, you see over 1,000% increase. Yeah, I mean, just wow. So I think it's like 1,100% increase there of married women in the workforce. And you think to yourself, well, what happened? How did we go from women at home to women only in the workforce? And how does that correlate with all these things? Well, this is what I started researching. Industrialization really began to happen in the turn of the century, the 1900s. The 20th century right there is when industrialization really began to take off. You start getting people that are really greedy for money, and they have these big factories or whatever they're wanting to put up. This kind of is where this begins at. And there's a major correlation between the depreciation of the dollar due to the Federal Reserve's creation in 1913 to the percentage of women in the workforce. This is an interesting little, I don't even know what you call it, like rabbit trail, I guess, to go down. Because With the creation of the Federal Reserve created a constant depreciation of the dollar. And I think this was done on purpose. This is by Gab AI. By 1980, the dollar had lost approximately 90% of its 1913 value, and half of the married women were earning wages. One household now needed two Federal Reserve depreciated checks to reach what one paycheck used to bring in. Hence, the Federal Reserve did not necessarily cause feminism, technological change, or social trends, but it did necessitate the mass migration of married women into the labor market in order for families to stay financially afloat. The creation of the Federal Reserve essentially began forcing women into the workforce. Not only did it become more normalized as you see like the posters from World War II, they needed the women to work in that sense, which I think was also a narrative that was pushed. But it not only became normalized, it became necessary. By 1980, it really took two paychecks to cover what one paycheck used to. And that was in 1980. This was considered like the golden era for, when we look back, where, one man working could pay for, a massive 4,500 square foot house and all that. And we can't even dream about that now. And that was after it depreciated. That was after it had already gotten bad, per se. So, imagine how much worse it's gotten now. Now, if the women are working, this is where we're going. If the women are working, what happens to the children? The children are the future. If you can indoctrinate the children, you can push whatever you want on them, and they'll grow up believing it. And so I think this all plays this role together. If the women are working, what happens to the children? Well, they go to school. As the women in the workforce rate goes up, so do the children in the public school system go up. And when women are not at home, the children are in schools. The federal education system, this idea was sort of tossed around by John D. Rockefeller in 1902. And John D. Rockefeller was right there in the middle of the Federal Reserve's creation. He was a businessman. He needed workers. He didn't need thinkers. He didn't need people that wanted to start their own business. He didn't need people that were necessarily even creative. He needed people that would come in at 8, clock in, do exactly what they're told, and clock out at 5. That's what he needed. He needed this generation of listening, do what I'm told robots, essentially. Standard workers. He didn't want people that wanted to stand up for what they believe in or whatever it may be. He didn't want people that wanted to push the norm. He wanted workers. So he thought, well, it's a whole lot harder to take an adult man and turn him into this than it is to take a 5-year-old kid and breed them for 13 years into what I need them to be. Teach them this is the standard. And I believe that's what he did. And, I was looking at some stuff. It says by 1920, almost every single rural county had a Rockefeller-built high school with state-sanctioned teachers who learned their craft from a Rockefeller-endowed school and or teacher's colleague. So within the span of 18 years, basically everywhere now had a Rockefeller school. What his idea was. He managed to implement that. And you have to understand how much money this guy had, how much influence he had. He pushed that. And so he was, like I said, he was involved in the creation of the Federal Reserve. If you don't know what the Federal Reserve is, more or less it's a bank that the United States doesn't own. It's somebody else's bank, Rockefeller's originally. And it holds all of our money. It's sort of become, there's no reason for it. It doesn't work. I don't know why we decided this was a good idea. I know why, because Rockefeller wanted it. And other people wanted it. But he actually used his son-in-law as the face of this idea to kind of start this Federal Reserve. And the son-in-law used all of Rockefeller's assets. He used all of Rockefeller's money to push it, to start it, to do it. And it became Rockefeller's bank that actually was what the Federal Reserve kind of became. And so effectively, he controls all of the United States' money and their school system at this point. So all of their educational ideas all of the money in the United States all flow through Rockefeller at this point. I mean, that's an influence. That's a pretty big deal. You want to talk about being able to institute whatever change you want? And so in the span of this 20 years, the women in the workforce doubled. It actually tripled within the 40 years. And Rockefeller controls what is taught. He controls the money coming in and out, and he creates this generation of laborers. And this is still what we see instituted. It's this idea of laborers, general labor. Let's push just being a worker. And I don't know about y'all, I don't want that for my kids. I don't want this idea of you're just a clock in, clock out type of person. That's not what I want for my kids. But that's what got instituted. Now, how do we connect everything? You can obviously see, I think Rockefeller played a role there. But when you really see his role with another banking family, the Rothschilds, and some of the connections there, this really begins to kind of interconnect about what gets pushed, what gets taught, what becomes normalized over the course of the next century. The Rockefellers and the Rothschilds were connected through banking, but they're specifically connected to this guy named Paul Warburg. Paul was a big supporter of the Federal Reserve. He was closely tied with the Rothschilds. He was friends with the Rockefellers. He kind of connects this all together. He was a German Jew. So he kind of carried a lot of the ideas of the German Jews at the time. Well, his brother Max Warburg, was a big supporter of a guy named Hirschfeld's transgender ideology. Hirschfeld was in Germany at the time, this early 1900s period, pushing transgenderism, pushing sex changes, studying sex and gender and all this stuff, and this weird modern spin on whatever, however you want to take it. Hirschfeld, not a good guy. I don't like him. He instituted the first transgender clinics. He was big in implementing and establishing pornography in the world. This is what this guy did, and I'm not a supporter of those things. And I think this is where the idea really began to take off, was in this European Jewish culture in really the 1920s. It's really when it was starting to become big. And Max Warburg was big into this. His brother Paul is obviously friends with the Rothschilds, a Jewish family, the Rockefellers. He's got all this ties in together. And so whenever you fast forward this 100 years, what ideas do you see pushed? It's crazy to think that the people who started the education system and essentially kick-started women in the workforce, the Rockefellers and all, were tied to this idea of transgenderism, sex change, and this idea that man and woman, the lines are blurred, that there's no such thing as man and woman, there's a million genders in between. So we really just went backwards as a society from the strong man, strong woman roles with clear lines, clear boundaries as to what a man was and what a woman was. This is what we do. It completely went backwards. It completely changed. Over the course of just 100 years, thousands of years of ideology. Boom. Gone like that. A few bad people with lots of influence and money kind of changed that narrative for us. And I'm not a supporter of it. And you see today, I mean, like I said before, how many transgenders do we see, right? You got this stupid guy trying to swim with the girls and beats them. Like, yeah, no surprise, man. You're a dude. You're supposed to beat them. Why are you getting awarded for that? I think the girl swimmer's name who should have won was Riley Gaines. I think was her name. I may be wrong. I may be getting all kinds of stories mixed up. But why are we seeing men in women's sports? Why is that a normal thing? You're a dude. Like, you have a ball sack, or were born with one. You shouldn't be playing with women. And I'll say that till the day that I die. These women, and I believe in women's sports, they deserve to have an outlet like that too. Why are we allowing men to go beat up on women? That's not fair. You wouldn't allow that. I wouldn't allow a man to beat up on my wife in any sense. Why do we think it's okay in our girls' sports? And why do we think it's okay for these women to try to become men? Like, no, you're not a man. I'm sorry. That you can't just decide you're a man. You either have an XY chromosome or the XX. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. It's not that hard to figure out, but for God knows what reason it is. And that started with a lot of these ideas. You see the blending of gender roles. You see women in the workforce. And I need to clarify that I'm not against women in the workforce. My wife works. She does a great job. All right. My mom's always worked. My nana's always worked. I mean, my families have worked. The women in my life. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying that this is the beginning of where lines got blurred. And it allowed the children to go into this institution that taught them whatever Rockefeller decided, really. It bred them to be what he wanted them to be. And I think a lot of these transgender ideas begin to get pushed. And you really see it, it didn't happen immediately as far as transgender ideas. It was slowly introduced over the course of 100 years to now it's normal in schools now. There was a school here last year where the rumor was that this kid was dropping out or something or other because they wouldn't put a cat litter box in the bathroom for him or her or whatever it was because it thought it was a cat. I mean, that's where we're at. And this is what's normal? No. I'm not a believer in that. I'm sorry, it's not normal. It's not what God instituted. We went back and looked at the beginning of time. How did God institute gender? He instituted man, he instituted woman. Man works, woman takes care of the children. That's why gender roles are a thing. It's because God created you that way. So don't try to mix it. Don't try to blur it. Don't try to a woman become a man and vice versa, or I'm gay and this and that. That's not what's happening. That's not normal. It's not what God instituted. It's not what he designed. That's for my point making this episode on gender ideology because, it needs to be talked about. It needs to be shown that, no, this isn't right. It's satanic. Sorry. Being gay is wrong. Being transgender is wrong. If you don't like that, you're not going to like this podcast. I can tell you that right now. That's a strong belief that I have. And it's backed by a lot of, thousands of years of biblical documents of lots of things. Like, wow, where in nature do you see that outside of chemicals being put in things? Turning animals gay. Why would God create us that way? He created us as puzzle pieces, man and woman, to fit together. And that's how it's going to be. That's how it's always been. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Rambled on a little bit there. But, I'm happy we finally got it filmed. I'm happy it's finally here. So thanks for joining me. Until next time. And, thank y'all.